Do you frequently struggle with absorbing other people's energies? Or do you frequently ask yourself this question, is this my feeling or is it somebody else's? Well, in this video I'm going to explain to you some of the subtler dynamics of reality that relate to this phenomenon, so you can better understand it, but most importantly, what you can do about it, so you can stop absorbing other people's emotions and live a more balanced and peaceful life. But before I get started with this video, I want to quickly announce that a couple of spots have opened up for the free consult with me for the Empath Development Program, so do wait around for the end of this video for the announcement on that. And with that said, let's get started, shall we? So the first important thing to understand when it comes to absorbing other people's energies is subtler dynamics of reality. So what are these subtler dynamics of reality? Well, it may appear on first glance that we are separate, but my feelings and your feelings are not so separate, they are interrelated. And so as an empath, or a person who has a high empathetic abilities, you're more in tune with this aspect of reality, this subtler aspect of reality, in which we are all connected. But this can lead to feelings of overwhelm, as you can actually sense how your feelings are connected with everybody else's. And you can also absorb other people's feelings because of this fact that we are all connected. We are not so separate. If you spend time with someone who's very angry, or if you spend time with someone who's very anxious, you're going to start feeling those emotions as well. In neuropsychology, they have a term for this, which is called mirror neurons. And so this is the first very important thing to understand when it comes to absorbing other people's energies. The fact that we are all connected. And as an empath, you are aware of this subtler aspect of reality in which our feelings are interrelated and they are constantly playing with each other. They're fitting into each other and they are in relationship with each other. The second very important thing to understand here is that pain times resistance equals suffering. That means that when you're in the presence of someone who is experiencing, for example, a lot of fear or a lot of shame, and you have not dealt with those feelings within yourself, you're going to experience a lot of resistance. That's why in this equation, pain times resistance equals suffering. But when we expand our own emotional capacity, when we reduce the resistance, we reduce the suffering. And if there is no resistance, there is no suffering at all. So if you're in the presence of someone by whom you feel that you are absorbing their emotions or their energy, so to speak, what you're actually experiencing is a lot of resistance. When there is no resistance, there is no suffering. But if you're in the presence of someone who is going through feelings that you have not dealt with within yourself, you have not experienced these feelings very mindfully, then you're going to feel a lot of resistance and therefore a lot of suffering. The next very important point here is that you have to notice your own capacity. So as an empath or a person with a lot of empathetic abilities, you're going to notice that sometimes your capacity is high. That means that in those moments in which your capacity is high, you can be in the presence of someone and listen to their pain, listen to their suffering, but you're not going to feel suffering because there's not much resistance. But in moments in which your capacity is low, you're going to experience a lot more resistance and therefore a lot more suffering. So in some moments as an empath, your capacity is high, and in other moments your capacity is low. And you have to start noticing your own capacity. The way to notice this is through your body. When in the body you start to feel an unpleasant sensation, you start to feel an unpleasant situation in the presence of someone who's going through some unpleasant emotions, that means in those moments your capacity is low. But when your capacity is very high, you're not going to suffer at all because there is no resistance. The next point here is it's very important to be aware of these two trances, the trance of fear and the trance of unworthiness. So the trance of fear and the trance of unworthiness are two trances that we get into when we experience a lot of unpleasant emotions. So when we're going through the trance of fear, we become completely disconnected from this present moment, from this reality. And we're unable to even see the person who's sitting in front of us as a real human being. So when we are lost in fear, when we are lost in a trance of fear, we are lost in our own imagination, in our own survival in a way. So we cannot actually relate to another person when we're in this trance of fear. And the trance of unworthiness relates to the phenomena where we get lost in these feelings of I'm not good enough, I'm not good enough. In those two situations, when we're lost in a trance of fear and we're lost in a trance of unworthiness, we become unable to relate to ourselves and we become unable to relate to the present moment and to the person in front of us. You may notice that you have a mental depiction of the person who's in front of you, but you no longer have the ability to relate to them as an actual human being with their own thoughts, their own feelings, their own needs. So we have to start to become aware of these two phenomena, the trance of fear and the trance of unworthiness, that really reduce our ability to be completely present in this moment and to relate to ourselves and to another person. So when you get this sense that you're absorbing at another person's energies or their feelings, so to speak, there's a very high likelihood that you're lost either in the trance of fear or in the trance of unworthiness, and you become unable to relate to this present moment and to the person who is in front of you. And the last point here is unreal other. Unreal other and unreal self. So, as I said, when we are lost in these trances of fear and in a trance of unworthiness, we start to see that we are no longer able to perceive another person who is in front of us. That's why it's called unreal other. That means that this other person becomes a mental depiction for us. They're no longer seen as a real human being that we can relate to, because we are lost in these trances. We are lost in the fear and we are lost in the unworthiness, these feelings of I'm not good enough. And this causes us to become disconnected from this other person and disconnected from ourselves. And so this is all very unpleasant, you know, getting lost in a trance of fear, getting lost in a trance of unworthiness, this sense of having a low emotional capacity at times, on having a lot of resistance, suffering a lot. But there are things we can do about this. There are ways of expanding our emotional capacity in a way that we no longer suffer from this phenomena of absorbing another person's energies. So I'm going to take you through that, what we can do about it. The first very important thing to understand when it comes to no longer absorbing another person's energies or their feelings is expanding your capacity. When you expand your emotional capacity to experience many different feelings without resistance, you no longer suffer. That means that you can be really present with another person who is going through unpleasant feelings such as fear, anger, anxiety, or shame, or whatever it may be, without absorbing those feelings, because you have no resistance towards those feelings as you have expanded your own emotional capacity. This is the most important point. And so in the link below, there's a free balance of mind training that I've created for this. And this really helps you to start and expand your emotional capacity. So this is the first point. And the second point is, in some moments, your emotional capacity is going to be low. And you have to communicate that, because you're not always going to have a high emotional capacity. There's no way. Sometimes you're going to be tired. Sometimes we just have a low emotional capacity. So start communicating, start learning to communicate your own emotional capacity to the people next to you. If you notice that you're in the presence of someone who's sharing something with you, and you notice that you start to experience suffering, you start to experience an unpleasant sensation in your body, you can communicate that and say, hey, I noticed that my emotional capacity, my capacity to listen to you right now is quite low, so I'd like to take a break. Practice this. Practice communicating your emotional capacity, but most importantly, as I said, is expanding your emotional capacity. Because when you expand your emotional capacity, you no longer suffer from this phenomena of resistance. You no longer suffer from this phenomena of feeling like you are absorbing another person's energies. And so we've come to the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it has been useful. Let's cover again what we covered during this video. The first important thing to understand is, as an empath or a person with a high level of empathetic abilities, you are aware of this subtler element of reality in which our feelings are all connected. But there are ways that you can reduce the suffering from this by expanding your own emotional capacity and being aware of the trance of unworthiness and the trance of fear, and noticing when these are taking over your consciousness so that you're no longer lost in these trances. And when you expand your emotional capacity, you lower the resistance. And when there is no resistance, there is no more suffering. So if you enjoyed this video, do leave me a comment. Let me know if you have any questions or if you have any ideas for future videos. So as I mentioned earlier, a couple of spots have opened up for the one-to-one consult with me for the Empath Development Program. So do click the link in the description below to sign up for that. And the people I normally work with are empaths or people with a high level of empathetic abilities who normally struggle with this feeling of absorbing other people's energies. They feel that a lot of situations are causing them emotional overwhelm, and that they are actually not finding a lot of balance emotionally in these kind of situations. But they'd like to get to a place where they feel balanced and centered in all these situations in their life. So if that sounds like you, do click on the link below. And otherwise, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll speak to you soon.